So, like, what are you seeing on the ground right now that Christian nationalists are really trying to push forward, and like, or is everything right now focused on the election for at the end of this year?
Well, I mean, it's a couple of different things. I mean, for a long time, let me actually back up a second, because we've had various waves of Christian nationalism throughout American history. There was one after the founding. You get into the 1830s, you get this wave. You get a wave in the lead up to and during the Civil War. And that's where we get "In God We Trust" put on our coinage for the first time. And then you get another big wave in the 1950s, when you have basically the big business is attempting to undo the New Deal, which put a lot of progressive policies into place. You have the rise of McCarthyism, the Red Scare, all of this stuff. And that's where we get things like the National Day of Prayer. It's where we get "Under God" added to the Pledge of Allegiance. It's where we get the National Prayer Breakfast, which just happened this morning, started. And all of these kind of artifacts from these previous waves of Christian nationalism become justifications for later waves of Christian nationalists. And they'll point to those and say, see, we are one nation under God, and in God we trust. And we have a national prayer breakfast. And they're like, yeah, but that's not from the founding, dude. That just started like a couple decades ago. And you can't really point to that as us being founded as a Christian nation. But this is the interesting thing, is that for a long time, Christian nationalism, this latest wave, was treated as a historical debate. Like, are we founded as a Christian nation or not? And there's no debate there. I mean, the facts are clear, and this is one of the things I try to point out in the founding myth. So you have to rip the mask off Christian nationalism and show that the point of those lies and that disinformation is not to show that, yes, we really are a Christian nation. It's for them to claim that they are the true heirs of the American experiment, right? That they are the true Americans and everybody else is lesser than. And that's one of the reasons that I use such strong language, why I call them out as un-American in the founding myth. Like, gentle corrections are not going to work on the Christian nationalists. It can't be, oh, here's what history tells us, here's what the founding fathers actually meant, here's what they've actually said. Correction is not enough, right? Otherwise, we never would have had a President Trump, right? Pointing out facts is not enough. Pointing out errors is insufficient. So the founding myth does that, but then it goes on the offense. It is meant to be an assault on the Christian nationalist identity. Not only are they wrong, but their identity runs counter to the ideals on which this nation was founded. So, but to answer your question about what are they doing, what are we seeing, they don't have any new arguments when it comes to the history. They trot out the same disinformation time and time again, which is one of the reasons that I think the founding myth is such a valuable book. It's because I put 10 years of this fight into that book. Like, I've encountered every argument they've got and know why it's wrong and have successfully argued against them, including in and out of court. So I include all of that in the book, but they still do use all that to justify public policy today. And I mean, we're seeing that right now. All the state legislatures, well, most of the state legislatures around the country just opened back up in January. And so we're seeing this flood of just awful bills trying to use public government power to impose personal Christian beliefs on everybody else. And that's going to continue. And that is always worse in an election year. It's going to be particularly bad in this election year. I do expect Christian nationalism to play a reasonable big role, certainly rhetoric wise, in this election. And the thing that keeps me up at night, the thing that scares me the most, is seeing a repeat or something worse of what we saw on January 6th. And I helped write and spearhead and organize a report about the role that white Christian nationalism played in the January 6th insurrection. And we had a bunch of experts who joined that report to explain what happened that day and to show that Christian nationalism really was a key part of the insurrection. And the way that I like people to understand it is Christian nationalism provided the permission structure for the insurrectionists, right? You do not attack the beating heart of American democracy without thinking that a higher power is commanding you to do that, that you have justification to do that, right? And Donald Trump is their chosen one. I mean, he has said so himself. They believe he is chosen by God. And when you have a belief system like that and reality collides with it in the form of a 7 million plus popular vote margin against your chosen guy, violence is almost inevitable. So I'm deeply worried about the prospect of violence in this election. One of the things that I tell myself to ease that fear is that in the midterms, so in 2022, we didn't see much of the violence that we were worried about play out, and partly that's because we do have Joe Biden as president right now, and Donald Trump, when he was in power, could do a lot more to damage the country.
Right.
Than and aid that violence than he can out of power. So that's one of the things that I feel better about. But of course, if he were to win, then I mean I don't know that the American Republic survives that. I don't think it would.
Well, it seems like there is a mix of Christian nationalists, like for the insurrection, for example, and then people that have just been whipped so hard by, whipped up so hard by YouTube and all of this. I think really like fake information. Like I hear so many people send me an article, and then I do 30 seconds of Googling, and there's so many facts. It's like, oh, this never happened. And so I think I would agree that it seems like the Christian nationalists are driving all of this because they want to get back into power. They want to impose the Bible or God's will on everyone else who, is not interested. And I think they're taking everyone else who's just angry at the economy, their life, maybe the healthcare system, like all of these things, and they're just going to use it as a battering ram to take the power that they want.